Today I'm going to show you how to recreate this West Elm designer look straight from a magazine in your very own kitchen at home.
Hey guys, it's Amanda. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, welcome. You are just in time for my first ever series. We're doing a kitchen makeover series starting with this feature wall right here on this island. We bought this house in 2018, but unfortunately we didn't get to choose any of the design features of this kitchen or really anywhere throughout the house. And so I'm really excited to be able to design it, recreate it myself, and get to share all of that with you. You'll notice that this feature wall is complete, but the rest of the island is still not painted. We're going to be painting the rest of it black, switching out some things like the handles. We're going to build a lot of things in the drawers. Eventually we're going to be switching out these pendant lights. We're going to be changing the faucets back here. All of this is going to culminate in a pantry makeover that I have planned for the last week of April. Our pantry is quite a mess right now. It just really needs a full makeover, and it's going to take me a little bit of a while to get there. But we're going to start with this design wall today. It was an idea that I found from a West Elm catalog. I'll put like a little picture in the video for you guys. I've been seeing so many DIY trends that have this like half round feature on it, kind of like a fluted, like bumpy texture. People are just buying these half round dowels and gluing them on literally anything. Headboards, nightstands, dressers, desks, so many different places. When I saw this feature wall in a West Elm catalog that I got shipped to my house, and I was turning the pages, see if I could like get any ideas, and I saw this island and I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do to my kitchen island. I love that this style has like a clean and simple, kind of quirky, kind of like mid-century modern vibe to it. I always wanted to paint this kitchen island black. There's a lot of the same colors going on in here. I felt like this kitchen just kind of needed a statement. So here we are, finally did it. Exactly the way I wanted it. It turned out great, and I'm so excited to share this with you. Stop eating my fake plants.
The first thing you want to do is remove any trim or edging that is currently on the island. You need a flat surface to cover with these half-round trim pieces, whether or not you build the wall extension like I did. After doing some research, I found out these white pieces that you see in the corners under the countertop are called corbels. Some corbels are for support under the countertop extension and others are more for decoration. If you're thinking about removing these, be sure to find out where your countertop is supported so you don't end up with broken granite. Our countertop has another support underneath besides the corbels, so I felt confident in removing these, but I was still pretty cautious and didn't get too close to the granite. So let me walk you through what I did here. I took the corbel off. It left us with just this little L shape back here. I measured this distance from the edge here all the way to the front of this wall and built this little extension. There is this tiniest little overhang right here, and it's just about a 1/4 inch or like 1/8 of an inch. You can just barely fit like a piece of plywood in there. So I built this out, exactly this measurement, added this tiny little spacer here, and the reason I did it instead of just adding on that depth to the entire cut is that I already had these pieces ripped down in my garage. They were literally just like spare pieces of wood that were almost the exact size I needed it, and I didn't have any other use for these, so I was like, I'm just gonna use these up, put a little spacer block there. So the spacer block is gonna help space the plywood that goes right here all the way across. So then you can nail into the bottom there, nail into the top once I get this full piece of plywood cut. And just from what I have in my garage, it's probably gonna be this little thin plywood on one side and MDF on the other. But it's gonna be covered, wrapping this extension here. I also put this little spacer down here in the bottom, so I cut this piece that is exactly the same width as the remainder of the corbel just to keep that nice and flush there. So I'm gonna end up securing this in the bottom here into the actual island, and then in the top here also, so that this will stay in place, and then this is a nice and secure frame for wrapping the rest of this little island extension. I used a couple of screws to secure the frame to the side of the island and on the top into what was left of the corbel. Be very careful with this part if you are doing anything like I did, using a screw directly underneath the countertop. Make sure that it is small enough that it won't go through the plywood and damage the granite on the other side. I tried using my circular saw to cut these next pieces, but I forgot to charge the batteries last night, so ended up having to get out the table saw. It wasn't too much of a problem though. It made very quick work of this job, and then I got to taping the pieces up on the island for a dry fit before securing them in place. Just finished cutting all these pieces, painter's tape, holding it in place here. So I ended up using 1/4 inch plywood on the front, thinking that if I ever am actually going to take this down and repaint the island or whatever I want to do with it, that the 1/4 inch plywood is going to match the finish on this side of the cabinet a lot easier than the NDF might. I don't know if there would be like a transition between painting the two, but I figure at least if that is the same, so there's plywood on the island and then plywood on the extension, and then if you just like have the transition around the corner, it's probably not going to be as noticeable, just in case the MDF doesn't paint the same way as the plywood. But of course, that's just for the future. It's not going to matter right now because of what we're going to do to the island by putting these 1/2 inch rounds on. These are the two paint colors that I chose. So the one on the left here is called Blackout by Bear, and the one on the right side is called, oh shoot, I forgot what it's called. Something like Vintage Dreams or something, I'm gonna guess. But anyways, and the one on the right, the guy at the paint store said there's like a little bit of purple added to it, and I'm really liking the one here on the right. There's like the slightest difference in them. The one on the right has a little bit more depth, more character to that color. So I think we're gonna go with the one on the right here. Luna, what do you think? Which one? Which one should we pick? Yeah, I know, it's a hard decision. They're both so much the same. They're so similar. But which one? Do you want to pick one? No. I did end up testing 3 Benjamin Moore colors later on, but I decided to go with Limousine Leather by Bear, which was my first choice. I used nails to secure the side pieces and then construction adhesive to secure the small front piece so that there wouldn't be any visible nail holes on the front. There's all this caulking left. That needs to be scraped off before you can replace the baseboard or whatever you're using as your pseudo baseboard. I'm using a 1x4 board here. If you still have that stuff on there, this board is not gonna sit flush against the wall. So what you need to do is go in and scrape all these pieces out. Then I'm gonna go in and vacuum all those little pieces out from the crack. Then we'll be ready to attach the baseboards. Measuring and cutting these baseboards was pretty simple. I started with a 45-degree cut on one end, then held the board along the wall to trace at the end of the wall where I needed to make the next cut. I chose a 1x4 board for this since it's thicker than your average baseboard, 3/4 of an inch versus 1/2 inch, and it will be bigger than the half-round trim pieces and should result in a similar look to the WEST ELM catalog.
One thing I need to add right here is paint your baseboards first before you attach them to this island here, especially if you have wood floors like I do. This is not something that I did in the video. At the end, you'll see why.
How to attach baseboards. Normally, you would just go in with like a tiny nailer and nail in the baseboards to your wall. Except this is a kitchen island and my dishwasher is right on the other side of that wall. So we can't just go nailing into this wall, except for this gap between the dishwasher and the wall here. So right to the right is where these baseboards are gonna nail in. So I know that if I use like a 1.5 or a 2-inch nail, there isn't gonna be much sticking out. It's not gonna hit anything along the bottom here if I just nail it right into that island. Now say you wanted to make these baseboards in your rental apartment. First of all, don't remove any of the 1/4 inch trim. If they have trim around the bottom of the island, obviously that stays. Yeah, cannot be removed for a rental apartment unless you have specific permission from your landlord. However, if you just wanted to add a little bit of trim around it to make it cute and not be permanent and not damage the island, you could use something like these little command strips, and they're sticky on both sides. So they're great for walls. I would put them on like this way so that you can use this little tab to easily peel them off. When they don't come off with just the little peel tabs, you can use like Goo Gone. Be careful and try like, you know, some rubbing alcohol. I wouldn't try any nail polish remover or acetone though, because it definitely would break down the paint that's on the island. But I think that you can get away with a lot with these command strips for a rental apartment. Hi Luna, you wanna play? Luna wants to play. Okay. There she goes. Bring it back. Fetch. No, I'm over here. Bring it back. Luna. Oh my gosh. Okay, so back to the point. Command strips for an apartment. If it's your house, do what you want. Do you, boo. I am so stoked with how this is turning out so far. Love all that trim there on the bottom.
Half-round dowels that I used for this project are actually made out of styrofoam. I was having quite a bit of trouble finding half-round dowels that were big enough for this size of a project. If any of you have recently had that experience, also let me know. I feel like this trend is so popular, those are probably just selling out right now. I didn't want to go with like the super tiny, like, you know, half-inch dowels because there would literally just be so many of these to fill this entire length here. So I was trying to find a bigger, like 1 inch or 1 1/4 or even 2 inch half-round dowels. I found these ones from Home Depot. They are actually made of styrofoam. I'll link it in the description box below for you guys. If you end up getting the polystyrene trim instead of the wood half-round dowels, make sure that the adhesive that you use is rated for plastic, because not all construction adhesive will adhere to plastic.
Out in the garage here, I made a very simple stop block. You know that my miter saw stand is on wheels, my workbench is on wheels, but they're both retractable wheels. So right now they're sitting on the floor. They're not going anywhere. They're pretty stable where they are. And so I can use both of these as a stop block. I marked the spot on the table where this ends up after it's cut. So this on this side is right there at the edge of the blade. And then on this side, it hits right at this block here. I just took a scrap piece of wood and I clamped it down. This piece of wood really is not going anywhere easily. I can take the big, long piece of styrofoam and just run it through the saw, right up here to the stop block, make a cut, and I know that I'm gonna get multiple equal pieces.
A quick note on cutting these half rounds. When you make a cut, sometimes you're gonna get a little bit of splitting on the ends here, and we want to minimize that because we want to minimize the amount of sanding that we have to do. And splitting is caused by the teeth on the saw coming out the backside of the material. So this saw rotates in this direction. The teeth are going into the material on the top, and then they're coming out on the backside. And sometimes when they go through the backside of the material, they cause splitting. And it looks like this. So there are these little tiny jagged edges. It's not quite a smooth cut as it is on this side. The way that the geometry of this half round material is, if you put the flat side of this half round down against the saw like this, then you're gonna get some splitting on the backside. So you can see with this cut that I made here, as the teeth come out, the teeth go in this way, and as they come out the backside of this half of the styrofoam, they're gonna cause some splitting right here. Now, if we make one small adjustment and hold this flat side of the styrofoam up against the back of the supports, so instead of flat down like this, we're gonna flip it up 90 degrees. And still use the stop block in the same fashion. Still get some splitting, but now it's on the back side. And we don't really care about the back side because no one's gonna see the back side. The back side is gonna go up against the wall. We care about splitting on the front because that's gonna minimize the amount of sanding that we have to do. So I definitely recommend, if you're using this half round material, whether wood or styrofoam, fold the back up against the saw like this. DIY that I did was I actually put behind all of these half round dowels. And the reason I did that is because I feel like this is such a trendy design feature right now that in like 5 or 10 years I might hate it. And I didn't want to use construction adhesive directly onto this kitchen island, because then what am I going to do when I don't want to have these anymore? If I ever decide I don't like this anymore, just rip off that contact paper and then I'll have a nice clean kitchen island behind this. What that also does is makes this a sort of renter-friendly DIY. You could definitely take some parts of this video, like the contact paper, and turn it into your own version of this DIY in an apartment.
Make sure to clean the surface before applying, and honestly, it doesn't really even matter what color of paper you put down, especially if you're going to paint over it. I just used white since I already had some on hand. You don't even need the application to be perfectly lined up, just make sure you squeeze out any of the big air bubbles. And of course, I left a message underneath for the next DIYer. Maybe it will be me, maybe not. I started on the right side of the island and leveled the first piece, made it flush with the end, and clamped it in place while the adhesive dried. If there is not enough room on the left side for a full piece when I get to the end, my plan is to add a small square board to finish it off. Make sure to use an adhesive that will bond plastic if you are using the styrofoam half rounds and or the contact paper. If you are using wood half rounds and are gluing it to wood, you can use most types of construction adhesive. I bet you're wondering what I'm gonna do with this outlet. That depends on what time Home Depot has my order ready. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just gonna switch this one out. It's a black one, and then it's gonna have a black plate cover. These pieces just go around it. So as soon as that order pickup is ready, then I can keep gluing these down. But until then, I'm kind of at a stopping point. That means it's time for wine. Do you wanna say hi to my YouTubers?
Hi YouTube, what's up?
The next morning, I was able to pick up my order from Home Depot and got to work on switching this outlet. I'm not going to teach you how to do this part yourself since I'm not a professional, but there are plenty of videos out there for you to research if you want to try this yourself. Make sure the power is off if you're going to attempt it, and if you don't trust yourself, hire an electrician. This step is also completely optional. The only reason I'm switching this out is so that the outlet matches the paint color and blends seamlessly. But if you're painting it white or you don't care about that, you don't have to switch your outlet at all. I tried cutting out here for the outlet, but it just looks kind of silly with it sticking out like that. So I think I'm just gonna cut the top and the bottom and then leave that little space there for the rest of the outlet. And then I think when it's painted black, you won't even be able to tell. Here's the cutout I did around the outlet. Ooh, that one has to come down a little bit. There we go. So securing these in place right here. And then when I paint this, I feel like you won't even be able to tell that there's that little space there, but it definitely looks better like this than the way it did with that weird thing on the side. And I'm glad that these two ended up kind of being the same distance apart, even though I didn't really plan for it that way. It works out. At this point, I was so ready to be almost done and moving on to my favorite part, which is painting. However, we always have to get through my least favorite part, caulking the seams. I added caulk along the baseboard and island extension and the right and left sides of the half rounds, but didn't put any between the half rounds themselves. I also didn't add any along the floor yet. That will be added after it's painted. The color I chose was Limousine Leather by Behr, and I ended up using about 3 full coats plus a few touch-ups. I like to use this paint additive called Floetrol to help get rid of the brush strokes. Use an angled brush to help get in crevices, and wait for it to fully dry between coats. Just a note here to paint your baseboards before you put them on the ground so that you don't end up with paint spillage onto your hardwood floor like I did here. Now it's easily coming up with an X-Acto knife. I've already scraped a lot of it off here. Luna's helping me. You helping me scrape it off? It's coming off with an X-Acto knife, but it's not the most fun thing to do. So paint your baseboards before you put them on the island.
Caulking usually comes in a few different colors at the store: clear, white, gray, black, and tan or brown. I used a black shade here to match the black paint, but if you're using a different shade, there are some techniques out there to help you match the caulk to your paint color. Peel the tape while the caulk is still wet for nice clean lines. Thanks again for watching. I hope this has inspired you to create some cool design trends of your own. Maybe recreate this on your own kitchen island. I will make sure to link all of the important materials that I used in the description box below for you guys. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time.